Members, we have a couple of our most senior members that will be giving their farewell speech today, and we're going to start with Senator Fielder.
Members, it's been an honor to serve these last 7 years here in Montana. You know, when I came to this building, I was a true green as grass freshman. I had never been in the building before until after I'd been elected. I remember doing some reconnaissance outside the building and watching for a car driven by somebody that I recognized and following them into a parking lot so I knew kind of where I should be to walk in that first day. I remember wearing my name badge in the crowded hallways and having people just part, kind of like the sea, the Red Sea parting when Moses walked through. You know, if you were a senator and you had that badge on, people moved out of your way. And I remember telling myself, don't get used to this. They won't treat you like this at home. And I don't wear that badge. I don't wear it very often at all anymore, and I like just kind of blending in. And I did notice the other day when I said hello to a representative that didn't know me, you know, he was a little too important with that badge on to say hello back. So I know that most of us are pretty humble in here, but just a word. Don't let that badge go to your head. We're just people that got elected, just like anybody else. We had to go through some things to get here, but we're just like anybody else. When I decided to run for office, it was the day that I had finished a book called The Harbinger. And I won't give away the story, but it's a mystery that ties together events from ancient times through our country's founding to the things that we're faced with today. And the word harbinger stands for warning. It's a warning. It's not a political book, but after reading it, I got down in prayer, and I decided I needed to do more to try to help our country be on track. And you know, the book made me ask questions like, why are we dealing with so much strife and conflict and horrific events in our times these days? And it answered those questions. The day I finished that book was the day I decided to run. Some of you might have noticed in my time here that the Constitution is kind of important to me, as it should be to all of us. In Senate Judiciary, whenever we do confirmation hearings on the judicial nominees, I always query them about what their oath of office means to them and why that oath to the Constitution is important. Montana Constitution, Article 3, Section 3, we all take it, the judges, the legislature, the executive branch. What does it mean? Do you know? And why do we have to take an oath to support it in order to be sworn into office? Why don't we take an oath to uphold and defend and support democracy? We don't. We take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, because there's a difference. The Constitution is a standard law which applies to us all. Republican, Democrat, Independent, green, red, or blue, it doesn't matter. It is predictable. It protects our basic rights and freedoms, all of our rights and freedoms, when it is followed. A democracy, on the other hand, and please don't take offense, is majority rule, sometimes described best as two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner. What is popular is not always what is right. Yes, here in this chamber we vote by majority rule. At the polls we elect our representatives by majority vote, but we are bound to operate under the confines of the Constitution, and in this chamber also the Senate rules. One thing that has confounded me during my tenure here is that so many people in this body are so averse to the principle of federalism. I have brought legislation forward to try to bring about education in federalism to our staff, to our legislative staff that advises us. And why? Some people believe that whatever the federal government says goes, and that's the bottom line. Well, the federal government has a little thingy called the Constitution too, that they must follow. And yes, in the areas where they have jurisdiction, and they're operating within the confines of the Constitution and not contrary to it, yes, in those instances they have the last word. But in all other cases where they do not have jurisdiction, those matters fall to the states. That's us. So where is that line? Where do the feds have jurisdiction and where do the states have jurisdiction? That is the question of that federalism answers. It's a division of power between levels of government, federal and state. It's a very unique system that was set up in this country. It's not just 3 branches of government, but it's these levels of government as well that are checks and balances on each other. It should not be feared, it should be understood. It's not political, it's structural. And if there's anything I could ask of you, it would be to embrace learning more about where our jurisdiction comes from as a state. The Montana Constitution declares us to be a free and independent and sovereign state. That means something. We have jurisdiction in certain areas. Where are those areas? Understanding that provides a balance and a protection against the East Coast telling us how to live our lives in Montana. And finally, and most important, is that our Constitution acknowledges God, our Creator. Our constitutions, both state and federal, specifically prohibit government interference in the free exercise of religion. We have the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution and Section 5 of the Montana Constitution in our Declaration of Rights. Our nation's birth certificate as well, the Declaration of Independence, acknowledges that we have a creator and that our rights are God-given, not man-made, and that governments are instituted among men to secure our rights. Religion and politics, did I really go there? Yep. And that is why I came here. My harbinger, my warning to each person here is that we are accountable to God for every action, every vote, every word we speak. While there may be enormous pressure on us at times from the masses or donors or peers, whatever it may be, we would do well to remember that we are ultimately accountable to our Creator for every action and every vote and every word. I leave you all with my thanks for your indulgence today, for your indulgence as we've served together over the years. I finally started to get the hang of getting along with people this session. Took a while for me to see people as people, not as Republicans or Democrats. My thanks to every member of this body, every staff member that makes this place work, every person that participates in our government. My thanks for every good and true and right thing that you do. Thank you.
With that, Senator Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, there's no way you would know this, but my father was a self-defense instructor in the Army in the early 1950s. He was very much a guy's guy, crew cut, square jaw, plain and hard-spoken. He never knew me as a Montana senator. He died before I was elected to this chamber, but he cried when I was sworn in the House in 2007. Prior to that, I wouldn't have guessed that my father had that in him. I mentioned my dad today because he reminds us that public service moves people. Service to a cause greater than yourself moves people. People believe that we and what we do here are important. We should be honored by their expectations of us, and and work hard to not disappoint. With that, I will readily acknowledge that for whatever good I have done here, much credit goes to my wife. She is far more than my better half. For whatever good I have done here, much credit goes to staff from Legislative Services. First, Greg Pettish, but mostly Todd Everett has helped me as I struggled to understand the arcane world of legislative rules and parliamentary procedures. First, Todd Everett, but mostly Joel Coleman have ably drafted all manner of natural resource legislation on my behalf. Sonia Nowakowski has been an angel to work with, ably drafting all manner of energy legislation. They are all consummate professionals. For whatever good I have done here, much credit goes to Marilyn and Carl and the entire staff of the Senate, indeed staff throughout the building. They have always treated me with more attention and respect than probably is due. For whatever good I have done here, my Republican friends and colleagues are due a lot of credit. You have helped me understand things I could not have understood on my own. And for that, I will always be appreciative. And lastly, for whatever good I have done here, my Democratic teammates are due great credit. You have buoyed me from day one. You have made me a better legislator than I ever could have been on my own. I will always appreciate that. Now, across what is nearly 7 full sessions and 3 special sessions, I have learned one important thing, and it came to me because of an abject failure that I was actively involved in fashioning. And it was based on a Rule Senate 5220, I believe, which is such an important rule, it's also nested in the Constitution. Specifically, Article 5, Section 10, subsection 2, that says, among other things, a smaller number may compel attendance of absent members. Now, some of you were here in 2013. You'll remember this, but I want to tell you the rest of the story. Almost like Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. Right? Only one person in this chamber knows this story. That's Senator Sesso. We had this brilliant idea in 13. The Democrats wanted to stop a bill. It was scheduled for third reading and had to move on third reading that day, or would have to receive a big vote in the House to be received late. The Constitution and the rule says the Senate can be called. If a senator's missing, 5 senators can rise and call the Senate. It's not a big deal to call the Senate. It just doesn't happen very often. Calls are easily lifted. But we wanted to burn the clock. When the Senate is called, work stops, but the clock continues to tick. And if we could burn the clock, we could set that bill on a difficult course going forward. So we intended to call the Senate. Right before we did, the Democrats caucused, as did the Republicans. And they came to find out that we were going to call the Senate. And so they kibitzed for quite a long while, trying to figure out what to do. Fair enough. Fair enough. So the Democrats mostly milled about the Senate floor. That is all known. Here's where the rest of the story begins. Commissioner Everts comes into the chamber. And he says, Senator Sesso, can we step outside? And John said, of course, yes. And then John invited me, more or less told me, come along. I'm the rules guy. It's like the blind leading the blind, but that's what you got. So we go into the House offices for the minority. And Commissioner Everts, a beautiful public servant, says to Senators Sesso and Phillips, just want to make sure you don't need anything from me. And I said, no, we got them. A smaller number may compel attendance of absent members. So Mr. Everett says to us, well, fair enough, but be mindful, President Essman may simply choose to move right to third reading without recognizing Senator Gent. Senator Gent sat in the front row, and I said, oh, no. Mr. Commissioner, Senator Sesso, they can't ignore us. We got them. A smaller number may compel attendance of absent members. Commissioner says, well, fair enough, but I'm just saying, President Essman might choose to just go to third reading. And I said, oh, no, we got him. At this point, Todd is no longer talking to me. I'm a lost cause. Senator Sesso, President Essman may choose just to go to third reading. But I got to go. So he leaves. We walk back in and mill about. The Republicans come back. And as Mr. Everts suggested, President Essman chose to go right into third reading. Senator Gent was on his feet, politely, but wasn't recognized. So in our infinite wisdom, we pop up, most of the Democrats, we pop up and start rapping on our desk. Mr. President, no recognition. So then we started banging on our desks. I used a book. And this went on and on and on. Then I had this great idea of throwing good money after bad. So I grabbed my book and I started waving my book above my head, making clear everybody understood a smaller number may compel attendance of absent members. This went on and on. The gallery filled, people excited. They began to get involved. The House stopped their work and came over to see what the ruckus was about. Well, to make a long story short, President Essman made it to the end of third reading, and the whooping and the hollering and the banging ended. And nothing changed. As I reflected on the debacle, and it truly was a fiasco, I came to realize that if I'd had just enough sense to say, John, dude, we should probably think, what do we do if President Essman chooses to not recognize Senator Gent? I suspect we would not have chosen to stand and bang on our desks and yell at the top of our lungs in some sophomoric display of frustration over not being recognized. We might have decided to stand quietly or leave. We would have done something far more senatorial and certainly more effective. But we didn't. We didn't because I was seduced by what I knew. A smaller number may compel attendance of absent members. The seduction was so complete, I was deaf to Todd Everts. I could not hear him. As I reflected on all of that, and here's the lesson that I have learned. What you know is not enough to serve Montana well. To serve Montana well, you have to be open, sincerely open to understanding what it is other people know. To do that, you have to be determined, willingly determined to hear what they have to say. For whatever good is done here results from people listening to one another. There is no other way for ideas to properly compete. And the legislature, the legislature is nothing if not a great stadium for ideas to compete. Mr. President, notwithstanding my deafness on occasion, it has been my honor to be a Montana senator. Thank you, sir.
I would like to give Senator Webb the opportunity to give his farewell address to us. So with that, Senator Webb.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the committee, it didn't take long to spend the night here. Fourth session, I was sitting over there. Freshman walked in here. We're going to set the world on fire. All I wanted to do would be on finance and claims. That's all I wanted. Fine. You're on finance and claims. But you're also on health and human services. Okay. I walked into that joint subcommittee. These are people are talking a foreign language. I went home, I said, what the hell am I doing here? I don't have a clue what these people are talking about. Lois Steinbeck. I spent 2 weeks in her office at night. Wow. I lasted 2 sessions. But most importantly, you know, folks like Carolyn, Lynn, Marilyn, Deb, Nadine, she needs a parking spot. Shirley, Carl, and Ray, they really make it worthwhile. I went back and looked this morning. You know, an oilfield kid from the Texas Panhandle had an opportunity, walked into a job, walked into the office in Denver one morning, said, we have an opening in Montana. I'll take it. You didn't ask where. Said, I don't care. I'll take it. I was supposed to move to Great Falls. My family and I, we landed in Lewistown. Within 2 hours, I was driving somebody's Jeep, and I bought a house. 2 weeks later, moving van showed up. "14 people. Still don't know who they were. Helped us unload that van. But Montana's been good. It's been very, very good to us. We got here, I guess, as quick as we could. But with that note, we've been successful here. I've learned a lot here, met a lot of great people. And just a note that I have to myself, if you want to be successful, keep it simple. Try to know what you're doing. Love what you do. Believe in what you do. And the number one rule, never say can't. Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bye-bye, Montana Legislature, with gratitude for the opportunity I had to represent Montana and for all the experiences I've had here. And a big thank you to the people of Missoula City and County who elected and re-elected me time and again. Thank you to my son, Corey, who took 2 weeks off from work in Washington, D.C. in 2012 to come home and help me through a difficult primary. Bill and I will see him and his amazing wife when Corey graduates from Georgetown Law School in a couple weeks. Thanks to my husband, never Mr. Malek, always Mr. William Turner. For 35 years, he has made my life an adventure and has taught me a ton because he reads everything he can put his hands on. Thanks to my parents. My mom was an ardent Republican who voted for every school levy, took in kids who needed a home while raising up her own. We would watch I'm sorry, excuse me, and inspired me to enter politics when I came home from 5th grade one afternoon and found her watching the news and crying over the death of President John Kennedy. Thanks to my dad, who persevered in difficult times to provide for his family. He inspired my politics as well. When he came home from work, we would watch the news together. I saw the police attacking people with dogs and billy clubs and powerful water hoses that would knock them off their street. People who just wanted the right to sit anywhere they wanted in a restaurant or a bus, or to be given equal opportunities and the right to vote. You'll find a handout on your desk showing women who struggled for the right to vote and who were beaten and abused for their efforts. Women gained the right to vote in 1920. Native Americans didn't get that right until 1924, long after they'd served valiantly in World War I. Notice in the timeline of women's suffrage, women lost the right to vote in the 1700s. It took almost 150 years to regain that right. The struggle for our democracy and the right to participate in it is never over. During Reconstruction, Black Americans served in public office, owned businesses, and were equal participants in daily life. And then the Ku Klux Klan took it all away. I came here to stand up for people who are too often not represented in public life and often find no opportunities to get ahead. After 11 years, I've learned issues are complicated and we don't all come at them in the same way. I have been overwhelmed with respect for senators who have stood by their beliefs no matter the stress and have, through their actions, done great things for the state of Montana. As I walk out of the Capitol building on Thursday, it is certainly with some sense of celebration. No more being locked up in here from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, missing exercise, fresh air, and square meals. No more going without a haircut for 4 months and waking up in the middle of the night thinking about all the bills and did I forget to prepare for something I'm supposed to do tomorrow. Certainly there is sadness too. I'll miss the committee chairs who led us to look for solutions and common ground. Montanans and their families, there were days, I'll miss being involved in passing great pieces of legislation that will strengthen Montanans and their families. There were days when I felt joy that almost overcame me because of the actions of this body. Thank you to Marilyn Miller, who is greatly respected by her staff, Carolyn and Lynn, Rick and Karen, and all of us who serve in the Senate. Thank you to Susan Fox and Sonia Nowakowski and all the staff, most especially, in my case, to Sherry Skuru, who I hope to see in full Viking regalia one day, shooting arrows at targets off the back of her horse. I leave you with a recommendation for a great read. The Candy Bombers, the untold story of the Berlin airlift and America's finest hour. This was given to me by a German immigrant when I told him the story of Bill and I going to France last summer, and on 2 different occasions, people coming up to us and crying, and we're so grateful that America saved them. But this read is about the heroism that we showed in Berlin at the end of the war, and it is a book that every American should read. I'm done pontificating and giving speeches. In the days ahead, Montana, I do hope you remember to hold a dream in your hearts of a fairer and better world. It's up to us. If we don't have a dream, how will we make our dream come true?
Mr. President, if I could take a couple minutes, I'd like to kind of say goodbye to the body. You know, I just wanted to say a couple of things and touch on before I go. that I think the day's going to wrap soon. We'll see. But as you know, it's been a wonderful honor for me to serve with all of you, every one of you, and over the years, every one of the individuals that aren't here. It's a privilege to serve my constituents back home in the state of Montana in the capacity that I have had, and you've been so generous to me, and the citizens back home even far more. They've been very tolerant of me, I'm sure, over the years. I have a couple of parting thoughts just on, when you're a guy that reads the rule book, you're a geek. Let's get that out right off the. Well, okay, not all are geeks. The three of the boys here, young lady, geeky. So, one thought: you can't understand this rule book if you don't know a little bit about Masons. So dig your nose into Masons. You don't have to read it from front to back. I never have. But read the pieces that apply. Then you understand how these rules really work out here. Until you do that, you don't. So it's just a suggestion. Whenever I fail around here, which is probably every day, it's the lack of communication. So I encourage you just to communicate. The more, the better. Because, we just don't quite always get it done. Of course, one of the other little details is read the bills. Just an idea, but particularly in the committees. And on the committees, you and I know that that's where the real work is done in this place. We're out here, we're on the show, whatever, but it's the work in the committees that's done. And you guys are incredible. Every member of this body are just frankly incredible. So, just those little tidbits, whatever they might be. I've been asked many times, why did I run again? Why did I come back here? I served 16 years, House and Senate, and I came back for this will be kind of 8 years before I'm done. And, at the end of the tenure, the term here. And so I'll be very candid with you, and that's that I thought I owed something back. I helped get term limits in place, and I respect the public of voting for those, and I respect them today for wanting them to stay in place. But I candidly think that we'd be better if we didn't have them in general as they are, or if they were longer. So you have my word on that. That's what I think. Target was federal. They stuck at the state level, and we're stuck with them. So I know that there's been efforts led by this good, fine chair of finance to change our system, going to an annual system from the legislature meeting. And I know that we'll work on that in the interim. I think that's the best way to build a stronger legislature, internally stronger for the citizens of the state. So I encourage that to be considered and worked on and done, and I encourage us to embrace that as best that we can. So at the end of the day, I want to thank my constituents back home. They've tolerated me for all these years, and through thick and thin. I'm sure, of course, a few of them haven't. They would rather not me be here, but I get that. We don't all agree on that, but they've been awfully good to me. So thank you to those citizens back home. They're the ones that count the most. Of course, we always thank the staff, but it's just so fundamental. It's so close to our hearts. When we think of the staff, I got this congestion, I'm not going to name any names because I would not catch them all. There's no way to do that. But you get so close to these people. They're so awesome. There's that congestion. That all we can do is say thank you. But I remember back people in the older days, Eddie McClure is passed. She was an incredible one. And anybody that served with her in the sense that she was a staffer, it was the greatest of times. She was just incredible. So I'm not going to name other names. Eddie's passed, so I hope she's smiling right now. So a couple other things I just want to touch on. Sorry, I've had this cold. I want to tell you that I want to thank you people. We thank the staff, but I want to thank you. Members putting up with me, dealing with me, working with me, You don't know how much I appreciate you. And I hope I show it to some level every day, but I hope you know. So I'm going to pass this to you. The most powerful forces on earth are faith, love, and hope. And I wish the abundance of faith, love, and hope on you. And I wish that God will bless you and your families forever.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. If you'll join me in the well of the Senate for a minute, we'd like to present you with a gift. Senator Thomas, on behalf of the entire Senate, we want to thank you for all of your years of professionalism and efforts to uphold the dignity of the Senate and protect what you've held dear with this process and this body. And with that, we want to give you a gift of appreciation and something to remember this chamber by. Senator Barrett, I believe that you would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do this, but a couple of things happened. One was that last night the Democrats all got together, played CeeLo, and there was a certain amount of alcohol involved. Discretion was thrown to the wind. And so I sang a song, and backed by popular demand is a song. That was one of the things. The other one was, and Senator Esp won't recognize this, but I think it was in the hall yesterday. He's talked to me about what I would say in my parting words, and I told him I wasn't going to say anything. And he kind of looked askance at that, and he said, well, it would be funny if you did. And I don't think he knows this, but the first bill I ever had when I was a House member in 2011 was in the Senate, in a Senate committee, was in his committee. And, you know, I go up to room 405, and there's Senator Esp, and he's a gruff guy, and he's got that gravelly voice and that grizzled appearance. I said, boy, this is a guy you got to take seriously. You got to pay attention to this guy. So I've never outgrown that. I still feel that. So I had to do this. I will say before I do this that I share with Senator Thomas and with the other people that have spoken previously my deep appreciation to all of you for the friendship and the collegiality and the work that we've all done together, and to the staff who are an absolute miracle and keep this ship going in the right direction. So in thinking about this, I was looking for some inspiration in the arts, and when you think about that, you say, well, there's not really very much in the arts that have to do with legislatures. And then I remembered this song that I'm about to sing. It's the opening act. It's the opening number in the second act of Gilbert and Sullivan's Iolanthe. And the scene to set the scene for you, and you have to engage in a little bit of willing suspension of disbelief here, is Westminster, the Houses of Parliament at Westminster. And it's the middle of the night, the curtains open, and Private Willis of the Grenadier Guards, who is guarding the Houses of Parliament, is standing there alone in the dark on the stage. And up here is Big Ben in the night, and behind you the Houses of Parliament. And this is what Private Willis sings. When all night long a chap remains on sentry go to chase monotony, he exercises of his brains, that is, assuming that he's got any. Though never nurtured in the lap of luxury, yet I admonish you, I am an intellectual chap, and think of things that would astonish you. I often think it comical, fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la, that nature always does contrive, fa-la-la-la-la, that every girl and every boy that's born into this world alive is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la, is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la. When in that house MPs divide, if they've a brain and cerebellum too, they've got to leave that brain outside and vote just as their leaders tell them to. For there the prospect of a lot of dull MPs in close proximity, all thinking for themselves, is what no man can face with equanimity. So let's rejoice with loud fa-la, fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la, that nature always does contrive, fa-la-la-la-la, that every boy and every girl that's born into this world alive is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la-la, fa-la-la-la, is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la.
President Sales.
Members of the body, I guess it's that time of the session here where we all get to, those of us that are leaving, get a chance to say goodbye. And I've thought long and hard about what I might want to say, considering I've been here almost 25% of my life off and on. And I've loved to hate this place, and I hate to love it. And I was going to kind of compare my experience to an experience I had back in college, and I ran it by a former member of the House and Senate that I served with, and he recommended that I may not do it. He said, you know, that might be a little offensive to somebody. And I said, well, I'm so good at doing that you know, why change my stripes now? But in an effort to change my stripes, and also in an effort to prove that we do change in this process, I've thought better of it. You know, it's hard to get your hands around what you want to say when you consider this is the last official time I'll probably get to speak. And there's so many things I want to say. There's been so many experiences here, and many, many of you, if not all of you, have shared in it in one way or another. But it has been a tremendous experience, and it's been said many, many times, and what's particularly true for me is that I never dreamt that at an age of 42 when I came to the legislature I'd make the best friends of my life. And I imagined that would always happen, with my grade school, high school, college friends that I had a lifetime, what seemed like a lifetime of experience, but I've had a lifetime of experience with you guys. And I think it's the iron on iron here that sharpens a person's wit, and it humbles you, and it teaches you to be a better person because on so many facets, but probably more than anything, it teaches you patience and humility because you don't get everything you want. In fact, you get very little of what you want. But it is an experience unlike anything that I've had the opportunity to do, and I think we're also blessed to be here. We're a very small portion of the population that gets to experience this, and it truly is nothing quite like it. A good portion of my life's been, believe it or not, has been spent on the backside of a horse. I had the opportunity to grow up with a couple grandfathers that were horsemen. I started guiding elk hunting in my 20s. I've had my own horses for better than 30 years. And one of my favorite things to do in life is to ride across the countryside and see what's around the next bend. And I'll never forget the very first time I got to see the Chinese Wall from down below, and it is a tremendous sight. I encourage you all to someday go see that. It's the most beautiful part of Montana I know of, and we're truly blessed to call this place home. So with that, I just want to say it's been a pleasure. It's been one hell of a ride, and I hope to see you down the trail. So thank you so much.
On behalf of the members of the Senate, we all pitched in. It was hard to match the poker chips from last year, but I believe Senator Ellsworth did a fantastic job here. You're going to have a little more time on your hands, and so we want to present you with a brand new driver for your golf game.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and maybe if we can get Fred to quiet down a little bit, I can maybe play with us later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, it's a little awkward speaking in the middle of the chamber like this, and so if I don't look at all of you directly while I'm speaking, know that I am looking at you all while I'm speaking. The first person I'm going to be looking at, though, is on this camera, and been in the chamber, whether it's the House or the Senate, for nearly 3 years. 8 sessions, 4 months, 32 months, plus a couple specials. It's a long time, and the person I want to recognize the most is my wife. When we decided to do this in 2004, it was like, what are we doing this? Why should we do this? This is not something you should do. I didn't really want to do it, but I did it, and she was stuck with me then, and she's stuck with me for 16 years, and many of us have enjoyed her treats and her cookies and all that, but I have so much I owe to her for sticking with me and allowing me to be gone. She runs a business, and it's tough, it's hard, and so Barb, Thanks. You know, I don't know really what all I was going to say today, but I thought I just harken back to the first day I was in the chamber in the House in 2005. When I stood up the first time in the House chamber and was sworn into office and took the oath. And on that day, as some of you may recall, it was a 50-50 chamber. We had a new governor, was a Democrat, so it was the closest I ever came to serving in the majority. But that day, I had no boundaries. This aisle was just a means to get up and down and around the chamber. Didn't have anything to do with advancing good ideas. If you wanted to pass something in the House in 2005 and then again in 2009, you had to reach across the aisle. You had to reach to both parties to get anything passed, whether it was one of these study resolutions that we're all so fond of, or something as important as many of the pieces of legislation that we've dealt with in these 16 years. You had to work together. And I, as a greenhorn freshman walking into the chamber in 2005, I thought that was the way it worked. You had to work with everybody to get anything passed. And, really on reflection, you kind of wish that's the way it was. Now, I know we probably won't jump to the unicameral, unless, Senator Osmundson's study bill for re-rigging the legislature takes us that far, which would be a good thing, not just annual sessions. But be nice if we fought hard, we stood on our convictions, we got elected as Democrats, Republicans, Green Party, Independents, then came here and then we were all one. We all had to work together, and we still could express our convictions, but we didn't have those labels in front of our name. I think it would be kind of a good thing, but that isn't going to happen. But that lesson in 2005 that I learned was that, and of course I won't go on to talk about other things that happened that day in 2005. Some of you might recall, but we won't bring that up. But I owe a lot to my dear friend Senator Keene, and now Representative Keene, in teaching us 4 freshmen from Butte that year in Anaconda. This is how you got to get things done. You got to work together. You got to lay down whether you're Democrat or Republican, and just work on advancing the good stuff, the good ideas, the things that matter to our constituents in each of our districts, but also to the state of Montana. We have a little saying, and many of you have heard it many times, what's good for Butte is good for Montana. And, I believe that. I think my town has not enjoyed a great growth spurt in these 16 years. As planning director in Butte, land use planner, the population was lower when I retired a couple years ago than it was when I started 25 years ago. Butte, like other towns in Montana, we got a lot of working people, and they sent me here to create jobs. They sent me here to bring money home and make sure that we got buildings, and we invested in infrastructure, and we took care of the college, and we did good things, built a veterans home. I can't thank you all enough for helping us get that done for Southwest Montana, not just Butte. But, I believe that. I believe that serving my constituents, and I guess I will shout out to them for the honor of serving them for these 16 years. They've sent me back 8 times in elections. I wish they could send me back again. We have term limits that we have to, it's a good thing this doesn't extend that far. The term limits, I think, are a joke. I'll say it on the floor. It's ridiculous. I think we all go home and get elected and don't get elected. That's our term. Our term is whether the people think we're doing a good job or not. But I digress. I thank you, the people of Butte, for sending me here and giving me this great experience. The message I have is the one I learned in '05, and I guess I'll tell the story about my colleague up there, Mr. President. And we lost 1 vote in 2007. Instead of 50-50, the chamber was 50-49 and 1. We had the famous constitutionalist from the Flathead, Lake County. And man, it was like night and day. Now, it's no reflection on the president. He was the speaker that year, but we went from 50-50 to 50-49. It's like I went to the other side of the moon in terms of how to work together. Now, thankfully, we got that 1 vote back. In 2009, it was 50-50 again, and I'm back on track. I'm thinking, well, this is the way it should be. It should always be 50-50. We worked hard, we worked together, and we got some good stuff done that year. And that message, that lesson of always treating each other as humans and as people and respecting our differing views. There's just no call for disrespect. People think the way they think. They're a product of their upbringing. When I came to Montana in 1978, my hair was down to my shoulders. I was a card-carrying environmentalist, and I would stand up for that renewable energy and against coal every day of the week. And then I became the planning director, and then I had responsibility for looking out for the taxpayer and looking out for all constituents and creating jobs and always understanding the cost of things as it relates to the benefits of things. And I changed. over the years. I am no less, and I say that to my colleagues, I am no less supportive of renewable energy than any one of you. And but I am no less supportive of all of the above and wanting to get the most out of all of Montana's natural resources. And I understand it from a fiscal and an economic development perspective that I'm sure you all respect me for, and I respect all of the views that all 50 of us here, and in the past, all 100 used to share in the House. And we are who we are, and I think we got to respect each other. And if we respect each other, and as was mentioned earlier, to communicate with each other, and always believe that everybody's here to try to do the right thing, we'll be just fine. I am going to be around for a couple of years. This is not my last act as a legislator. It's my last time I'm going to get up on the floor. And the last story for me is to try to give another example of what being people are versus legislators or politicians, is all of the respect that you all shared this time. No matter how much I disagree with some of you, or how much I agree with all of the people in this room, there's not a one of you that didn't come and ask me how I was doing. when I hurt my eye. No matter what. It was right after a couple of heated debates. Next thing out of somebody's mouth is, hey, how's that eye doing? Are you okay? You gonna be all right? That's who we are. It's been a pleasure. All those thank yous that everybody else made to the staff, fabulous. You know, 2005, Maryland was there. You're here now. See ya. And to all of you, you'll be just fine without me. And just ask you to keep sharing that love for each other. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Sesso. Senator Brown, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a lot of years, I have to say. I've served with 3 governors. Governor Martz was a special lady. I also served with the first female president, President Barrett, right over there. Governor Martz, I remember during House Bill 2, I was a freshman. I was one of those that came in on term limits. And I voted against House Bill 2. And I got this little note, may I talk to you in my office? I thought, okay, here I am, a freshman, and I'm going to the governor's office. And I'm sure it isn't going to be very fun. So I went down to the second floor and I said, yes, Governor Martz, what did you need of me? And she said, very nicely, she said, you know, Representative Brown, I really need all the votes from my party on House Bill 2. And I looked at her and I said, you know, I have to tell you that I am going to vote again against House Bill 2 because I represent my constituents and not the governor. And very gracefully, she said, I appreciate your comment. Thank you very much. So I get back up to the floor, and my friend Dave Lewis, who had served as budget director for, you know, Democrats and Republicans alike, he's sitting across the aisle from me, and I said, because I knew he voted against it too, and I said, hey, Dave, did the governor call you down to her office? And he said, no, Dee, she knows me better than that. Then we had Governor Schweitzer. And one of my bills that I am proudest of was the Montana Recreation Responsibility Act. And this lady right here was the lobbyist for the Outfitters and Guides. And we worked and worked and worked and couldn't get it through the first session, and worked and worked and worked the second session, and I heard that the Governor Schweitzer didn't like that the university system was included in my inherent risk bill. So it didn't go anyplace again. So the next session I brought it. I'm home before the last week of session, and I get a call from Tracy, the lawyer up in Alaska, who had been working on this with us. And she said, Dee, she said, the governor's office called and said that if you put in the university into your Recreation Safety Act, you'll get it passed. And I went, wait a minute. Last session, he didn't want the university in it, and now he wants the university in it. What's going on? And she said, I don't know. She said, it's your call, it's your bill. And so after Coors Light or 3, I said, okay, I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to put the university system in it, and sure enough, it passed. Well, then we get to Governor Bullock, and I was at a party with Governor Bullock this session actually, and I walked in with a bunch of deviled eggs, and the majority leader grabbed them out of my hand and said, hey, who wants to have a, he was like the hawker of my deviled eggs. And the governor ate 3 of them. Well, later on in the party, I'm leaving, and the governor says, hey, where'd you have those deviled eggs made? And I said, what do you mean I made them? And he says, oh, they're very good. So I figured, you know, after this session, maybe I could apply to be the cook over at the mansion. I don't know. I've always liked sitting in the back row, and I have in the Senate forever. This little corner, you get to know the people within an arm's reach better than anybody else on the floor, besides the people you work with in committee. So here I am this session between well no and hell no. And I like sitting in the corner of no. I would say 2 accomplishments of mine during my years in the legislature is the recycling of these envelopes. I just couldn't stand it over in the House where everybody dumped them in the garbage. And I said, there's got to be a better way than this. I've always been a recycler, organic gardener and all that. So we've been recycling these forever. And one the women will appreciate, and Lenore knows down on the first floor, is I requested that we get potty seats in the women's restroom. And Lenore said, you know, I've been trying to get those for a long time. And I said, put my name on the request and I'll talk to whomever it is. And thus we have tissues in the women's restroom from now on. Good job, huh? Now, through the legislature, we have, yeah, I say, woohoo! You women will know that. Through the sessions, I've served with a lot of people. I mean, President Sales up there, Minority Leader Sesso, many of you I have served with multiple terms. But I have to say that one of my favorite leprechauns is Jimmy Keene from Butte. Now, Jimmy and I served over in the House, and then we served in the Senate together, and he's now over in the House again. But I have to tell you a couple Jimmy Keene stories. He and I were working on a snowmobile bill over in the House that would make out-of-state snowmobilers pay for some of the grooming funds. And so we had this idea, and it was a great idea, and we were going to do the same as Idaho did. If I snowmobiled down there, I had to have a permit. If they snowmobiled here, well, we got into my first conference committee, and we're with a very powerful Republican senator from Missoula, won't name names, and he had been influenced by a very big businessman in West Yellowstone who wanted more of the funds, right? So Jimmy and I talked, and we went into this conference committee, and we locked up and said, thanks, but no thanks. The rest of our constituencies need those funds as much as West Yellowstone. So we went out and said, yeah, whatever. Well, Jimmy had been to a few conference committees, and he said, well, I'll give him about 2 hours, Dee. And I said, what do you mean 2 hours? It's already done. And he says, you just wait. Well, it was about 45 minutes, and we got word that they were going to accept our bill. And so we've always high-fived about that. Then one time, while he was a senator, he sat in Senator McConnell's place. And I sat behind him, and I said, hey, Jimmy, I went to Butte over the weekend. And I said, we went to 4th Street Market, my friend Marie and I. And we went to some antique places, and I bought these 2 beautiful pins. And I said, I wore one today just to show you. I said, I can imagine that it was on some, in the heyday, some madam up in uptown Butte. And he went running around the desk, and he looked at it about this far away, and he says, nope, don't recognize that one, Dee. Don't we love our leprechauns? There were some sad times during session. The night that I won one of my house races and my mother died is a night I'll never forget. But there were some good times during the session too, and that was always having to do with grandkids. I had 4 grandkids born in the last few sessions, and course, they're smarter and more charming and more precious than anybody else's. But over the weekend, 2 of them came up from Arizona, and my little Colton, 9 years old, he's watching me open the mail, and he says, "Grandma, is this right?" And I says, "What are you looking at?" And he goes running to his brother, and he says, Ethan, Grandma got a letter from President Trump." Well, Ethan wasn't too impressed, but he was really impressed. And Colton looked at me and he said, "Grandma, are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And I said, "Well, honey, I'm a Republican." And he said, "Me too, Grandma." Another good time was spending some time with my son, who joined me in Cleveland for the Republican National Committee. And I can honestly say, or the convention, I can honestly say, if you've never been to Cleveland, go there. It really has spruced itself up and done a great job. I consider, you all know who Mike Rowe is, Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe. I consider the dirty job of the legislative session to be the hard work that we do in committees. And I truly appreciate the people who show up and actually participate in committee work, because it isn't front page stuff. It is the dirty work we have to do to get it out here and then try to blast it 52 times and table it again and resurrect it. But you know the people who do that dirty work and the people who don't show up. But I have to say, I really appreciate the staff who staffs those things. I mean, I'm looking at, I call them my lurkers, the Leannes and the Jacelins and the people who follow me around trying to get my signature on something. But I have to give a shout out to the first floor, not only all the first floor, but I probably have learned more from legislative audit than I will ever remember. I learned more about government from those hard workers down in audit than I think I ever could without them. I also have to say that, and I'm going to leave somebody out, but the Sherrys, the Pats, Susan, Ginger, Rachel, Laura, Jameson, Todd, all of them on the first floor who have crafted our bills, who have done the amendments, who have redone our amendments time and time again. I have to say a big shout out. The staff up there, I mean, what could we do without you? You keep us in line. You're lurkers too, I have to say. I have to tell you that one of my friends said on Facebook the other night, she side messaged me and she said, "Dee, thank you for being the drill sergeant in a sea of nuts." I said, "Okay, I'll tell him." During my free time during these legislative sessions, our constituents think that we drink expensive booze and smoke big fat Cuban cigars. But my time, usually, I don't do either of those, but usually, I'm usually painting. And I have always been a woodworker, and I've always made an ornament for my family. In fact, one of my friends calls her Christmas tree the D tree. But I want you to know that I have totally loved working with you. I will not miss the BS, but I will miss every one of you.